This is a story about a sensibility that found expression in the wonder and ideals of Einstein and Niels Bohr all through the course of their lives.
We're not talking about nuclear science, we're talking about these human beings and how important they were as human beings.
The sensibility of these two men does not require genius. It is a quality that is available to any one of us in our daily lives.
You know, I've been doing the Einstein-Bohr thing as a solo for now over 20 years.
I've probably been to all of his performances every time he's given one of one kind or another.
That's how I know Einstein. I couldn't imagine Einstein except as Len Barron.
I have been presenting that one-person theater piece for audiences of 10-year-olds to rooms full of scientists. And then came a little twist.
He made a big point about the grandmothers.
I thought, you know, this has real power as a possible ensemble piece. And so I thought to myself, well, who am I going to do it with? Grandmothers came to mind.
And now he said, and now, guess what I'm going to do? Grandmothers.
One of the advantages of being an old man is I know a lot of older women.
I thought, oh, that sounds really fun, but grandmothers?
A bunch of grandmothers going to talk about Einstein and Bohr. How good can it be, you know?
Well, this should be fun. Let's try it out.
Oh, that's so great.
That meant we were of a certain age.
It was a stretch.
I wanted no part of it.
I called him up and said, yeah, I'd do it.
My reaction was, yes, I love it.
Baron, this is a brilliant idea.
These two men were raised on fairy tales.
Einstein on peace and justice.
You know, at the start, they didn't know what it was going to be like. I had told them a bit thing, but mostly it was an act of faith. This is without a question the most beautiful project that I've ever put together.
Oh, what a... he's so great.
So I thought, if I have grandmothers sharing the thoughts of Einstein and Niels Bohr, the impact will be more than just average people doing it. It would highlight the wisdom and the dignity of elders.
What I objected to was the idea that it would be Jane Smith, age 74, somebody something, age 84.
And this is Miss Sandy, everybody. Miss Sandy Hale.
Hi, Sandy.
I happen to have lived my life for the last, since I've been old, on this basis of don't ask, don't tell. Because I think people do judge. They do judge you by age.
So one of the great advantages of being older is that we remember.
I've been waiting to be told. What?
Well, one.
Only one? Like, I'll take one. At this point in life, even if it sounds like a cliche, we are wiser, you know, we're wise. Now we understand many things.
You're a beautiful woman, and I want that vitality to be there.
One highlight is when we took the picture. I mean, you see that picture and it's showing the personality of each one of us. That was a lot of fun. It was like we have been doing this for 3 months, and it was, I think, the first night.
My goodness, what a collection of lively, beautiful women.
Toe through the tulips. Putting on his makeup. All right.
It was kind of like a little magical space where people came together and whatever unfolded, but there were no expectations or prior associations to get in the way of what was immediate, and I thought that was great.
Now we're playing for a house of 250 people, so let's start playing big.
These two men traveled deep into unknown territory.
Claudia?
More than that.
Oh yeah. So play it big, because the body, get the body. the body.
He is not a seasoned theatrical director. And sometimes he sort of could use a little extra push in that area.
You just have to remember what you think is loud isn't loud. It's more your body that I want than
But
the voice.
I don't think he's aiming for stage perfection kind of thing.
We're playing ourselves. We don't have to play anybody but ourselves.
I had read the whole script, and I particularly liked one of the parts that I was assigned.
On walking. For Einstein and Bohr, walking was not only a dear pleasure, it was an indispensable part of their thought processes.
I never walk, so I don't know why I related to that.
When Werner Heisenberg first came to Copenhagen, Bohr greeted his friend with, "Let's go for a walk." They walked for 3 days, talking physics and making up games along the way. As for Einstein, his love of walking was well known. And when someone asked him, how come walking was so important for him, Einstein replied, "If I didn't walk, there never would have been an Einstein." Einstein and Bohr would often walk with their hands clasped behind their backs. That manner slows you down, and you become more in tune with the unwilled rhythm of the body. Walking keeps us in touch with our animal nature, in touch with our own rhythm, in touch with the ground, free to wander and daydream, to look about and think, or just to get somewhere.
You know, as you heard those lines and you realized how the two friends talked together, Niels Bohr and Einstein, you know, their relationship in walking together and talking together. You know, I thought, yeah, we have so many ways of being together.
Einstein picked up his walking habit early in life. One habit he never picked up was driving. Years later, his wife told a visitor, "Oh no, my husband never learned how to drive. It's much too complicated." Here you have these great minds, and the wisdom of these physicists was just, ordinariness. Ordinariness out of extraordinary circumstances.
You tend to think of scientists as not being humanists.
Always drawn to what is elemental, Einstein and Bohr were inspired and educated by the imagination and inventiveness of children.
The principles that govern their life had nothing to do with intellectual prowess. It had to do with their sense of being fair. It had to do with their grand sense of play. Einstein and Bohr were models of playfulness.
At Bohr's Institute, there was time for play, and he was fond of films, especially Western cowboy movies. One evening, he went to see a film with George Gamow, Lev Landau, and Hendrik Kasner. After the movie, they talked about something that puzzled Bohr. How come the bad guys appear to draw first, but it was the good guys who shot the bad guys? Well, they talked about that for a while and then went off to bed. The next morning at breakfast, Bohr declared that he had solved the dilemma. He explained that the bad guys had to make a conscious decision as to when to draw, while the good guys responded intuitively, and they naturally won. Gamow shouted out, "Bohr, this time you've gone too far." Not one to be deterred, once he got an idea, Bohr said, "Let's test it out." So they went to a shop and bought cap pistols. They walked back to the Institute, and 3 bright lights in physics lined up on one side, Bohr on the other. Each of the three, one at a time, drew first. Bohr shot them all.
The one I remember most clearly was the one about sailing.
That intuitive energy, that root feeling, gifted them with an affinity for the natural world. They were both avid sailors. You had to see Einstein in a small sailboat to realize the strength of the roots that bound him to a simple outdoor life. Wearing sandals and an old sweater with his hair ruffling in the breeze, he would stand upright, rocking with the sail he was maneuvering. He was absurdly happy as soon as he reached the water.
Einstein's friends often talked about his indifference to danger. He loved to sail in rough weather, and on several occasions he had to be towed in because of a broken mast. Friends got upset with him because he refused to carry a life jacket on board, which was a real hazard because he never learned how to swim.
Bohr, in his usual social ways, owned a boat with two friends. They called the cutter Cheetah. For Bohr, being at sea was one of the great earthly delights. For all the pleasures of sailing, the great tragedy in Bohr's life was the drowning of Christian, his and Marguerite's firstborn.
I am a very emotional person, you know. I cry at the drop of a hat, and it's very hard to keep my emotions from overcoming me as I'm reading about this man's son.
Christian was 17 and had just graduated from high school. He was hurled overboard when the boat was struck by a huge breaker. Though he was a good swimmer, the high seas proved too much, and he disappeared in the waves. Bohr's friends had to hold Niels from jumping into the water because it would have meant he too would have drowned.
And that was an extremely moving piece for me, and sometimes quite difficult to control my tears, my emotions, as I read that one. I remember that.
On August 26th, family and friends gathered to celebrate the life of Christian. Bohr spoke of Christian's passion for art and science and eased the grief by talking of the joy that Christian had brought to him and Marguerite, to his grandparents, brothers, and his friends. Bohr reminded the gathering that the people we love never die, and that Christian would always be alive in their hearts.
What Len chose, or what he put together for us to read, made them real individuals and real people with children and tragedy and love, all these things.
The quality that shaped the lives of Einstein and Niels Bohr was the feeling of trust.
Trust is so small, the piece is so small, but it's so powerful. I didn't want it to get lost.
It is not coincidental that parents and teachers share the same job: to foster trust. When that quality is well seated, all manner of wonder and affection abound.
So often we don't develop trust amongst young people because we think we know it all. We've experienced a lot of things. We're older, so they need to listen. But we haven't developed any trust.
There's no greater gift you can give anyone is to be a person of trust. When we're in the company of people we trust, we feel comfortable, we feel free to be ourselves. Trust, you know, trust.
And I said, you know, they just don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Some of the reasons that we're suffering right now in education is because we have lost our ability for playfulness. We've lost our ability to help kids imagine and dream.
You know, Einstein said, if you want your children to be intelligent, read them fairy tales. If you want them to be more intelligent, read them more fairy tales.
Science and math, science and math. What happened to art? What happened to music? What happened to dance? What happened to all those things that are also part of who we are?
We're losing that because we don't have time for discovering. I don't have time for you to mingle through it and oops, sorry, it's time to do, 3 tests now.
At a time where testing is so much a part of what goes on in the schools, that's a very different quality. That's training people to remember particulars, to remember details, but the gist of how you make a life, that's not involved in any test.
The purpose of education is to nurture thoughtfulness. The lesser function of thinking is to solve puzzles and problems. The essential purpose is to decide for yourself what is of genuine value in life, and then to find the courage to take your own thoughts seriously.
Palm! I love that part. I love that part because I'm telling it to myself.
Imagine sending your child off to school where fairness, beauty, and playfulness fill the air in the classroom, in the hallways, in the neighborhood. Imagine that.
In the 5 weeks we worked together, and then the performance, and then time spent afterwards, there wasn't one moment of discord. There wasn't one moment that anybody said, damn, or why, it was a perfect collection of people working together, celebrating each other, and everybody rooting for everybody.
Oh, this is an older show.
They will look at my beautiful.
Imagine that. Everyone rooting for everyone.
It was wonderful.
So much fun. Just lovely.
Beautiful.
Wow.
I just loved it.
Oh, yeah.
Yes!